A bit of context. This session took place here in Nashville, Tennessee, at Paragon Studios, a facility known for, amongst other things, their audio production work on a wide range of movies and television shows. We set up for 8 days of recording for what has now become DrumatiC Creator, and for another yet to be released Creator Series library that will be based around drums from a broad range of cultures. I hope you enjoy this, and as always, thank you for your time and support of our instruments and libraries. All right, we could probably talk a little bit about the microphone setup. We're running many different setups, starting with some microphones in the ceiling, and those are Audio-Technica 2021s in Omni. Then we move to a wide-spaced pair, 4040s, AT again, Audio-Technicas. Go to a space pair of Neumann 184s and into a pair of CAD E100Ss, which are kind of a hypercardioid setup. We have a pair of spaced Sheps small condensers, and finally the Blue brand Kiwi mic and a talkback. So the reason we set all of these up relative to where we are is really just so we have more selection than we need when we finish the project, and also so we can test out some different configurations that we haven't used in the past. So for Tycho Creator, for example, we use this for the close mic. We use the CADs for the mid mic. We use the Neumanns for a distant mic, and then for the room mics, we actually use Rhodes. But in this case, as I mentioned, we're using the Audio-Technicas. So far as we're listening back, we're really liking the Audio-Technicas, the Neumanns, and the CADs and the Sheps right now are in a dead heat to see which ones make the project. Both of them bring something cool to the project, so we'll see where that ends up. So besides the technical setup of the mics and which ones we choose, we actually spend quite a bit of time on day one actually kind of spacing out the floor, putting markers. You can see we've got markers all over the place that kind of help us indicate a center line to the room. So one of the things we really try and achieve when we're sampling drums is to kind of get a very uniform sound left to right, that, you know, we don't have one drum hanging in volume over to the left or to the right. So we kind of just set up in the room, we hit the drum in a few different places and see, starting with the spaced pair, seeing if we can get a really balanced left-right sound. And spaced pair, I mean like the furthest mics. The microphones in the ceiling we can't do much about those, but they're set to an Omni position, so they will be what they will be. So here we are in the control room. We're running some of the mics through the SSL 9000, and from there we run into an RME Fireface UFX2. We're actually using a few of the preamps on the RME because they sound quite superb. Here is where Anthony, the editor and tape op, is sitting, and then I have a mirrored view of what he's seeing out there. So this is the drum that we just sampled. It's a DW. It's an 18-inch shell, which is not typical to a standard drum kit. Even if you had a 5-piece, you're going to usually end up with a 16-inch floor tom, so a little bit bigger. When we're in these situations sampling, when we're in just such a quiet room, and this is, I think it's the quietest room here in the Nashville area, once you start hitting a drum, especially really hard, you start hearing all sorts of things that you don't normally hear, especially when the drum's being played in a solo situation as opposed to in a kit. So a moment ago, as we started sampling this one, some bits and pieces of the head had flaked off into the underside, which, let's see if we can see that, and they were bouncing up and down inside the head. So we had to kind of drum tech this right away, flip it over, take the bottom head off, get the junk out, and then we actually had some rattling from one of the lugs, so gaff tape and some rubber jellies to the rescue there, and that helped us get through the take pretty quietly. So some of the tools of the trade here while we're sampling, the gels, which just happen to or allow the drum head to be dampened a little bit in a very nice way. It's all sorts of different gels that you can use. I found the variety of sizes in these, what are they called? Slap cats to be particularly effective. Good variety. Gaff tape, boy, can't live without that. And then, funny enough, chapstick. Because you stay so still and so quiet, you forget to lick your lips, and by the end of a sampling session, your lips are so dried out. Then we've got the drum dial tuner, which just helps us hone in on the tuning. A couple other random tools, and then pretty much always at the ready is just more sticks than you can shake a stick at. Does that work? Even when we go in thinking, hey, we want to sample this with a rod, you know, it could be this one, it could be this one, it could be this one, it could be these. So we kind of get in here and decide, okay, which rod is it going to be? We've got the violin bow, which we've been using for various cymbals just to get some nice effects. And we've got some dampening rings, which we haven't been using all that much of because it hasn't been necessary. The drums have sounded great. And some other, you know, sticks, tubes, and high frequency kind of click-clack sounds that we make with these. Something you may have noticed a moment ago are these lollipop-looking mallets, but they're not actually mallets. They're just rubber balls on a stick, and we've been using these on many of the large drums to kind of coax sound effects out. If you've seen the Taiko Creator, there's a Taiko Creator video where I showed how we created some kind of groans and moans out of some of the huge Taiko Japanese drums by just rubbing the thumb around the head. And these are basically mimic that just in a more effective fashion. So let's see if we can coax one out of this. And different sizes kind of elicit different types of sounds. And again, we'll use these in the final library as we did in Taiko Creator, where we actually take the raw recordings and we do some sound design work around them to allow you to put underneath your drums and really kind of just fills out, gives texture, mood, all that nice stuff. And along with doing them on these drums, we've been doing them on just about every natural skin drum that we have, because those just sound even better than that. As you can see, we've got some huge frame drums here that will have those as well. So here's a drum that I've just finished hitting and doing a round of sampling on, just standard head hits. And this is a reflection of what Anthony, the tape op and editor, is seeing on his screen. So we keep the screen out here, and he actually enlarges and makes smaller the screen as I'm playing the drum, so I can see how hard or soft I'm hitting the drums, how consistently I'm hitting them. And actually having the screen here is just kind of of paramount importance for me to be able to gauge, you know, if I'm hitting harder or softer than the last set. A little bit to say about the approach to sampling and what you're seeing here is we've decided to try and do 7 velocity ranges on drum hits. So you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I just play about 10 hits, sometimes 11 or 12, just depending on if I've got good consistency or not. You can tell at the end here, I actually did a few more takes because you can see I was a little less consistent. And when you're hitting a drum this hard, if you're just even half an inch off from where you hit it the last time, it can really, you can hit it just as hard, but it can make this kind of difference, decibel difference in the transient there. So just did a few extra takes. So what we eventually have in our library is we, out of the 10 from each one of these, and again a few more here, we will go through all of these, and we won't use 3 of them. So we use 70% about of what we record, and then we have 7 velocity layers, so that when you're playing a drum, let's say repeatedly at this volume, you would hear 7 different hits before you would hear the first one repeat, which helps, that's called round robin playback or sampling, and that helps kind of trick the ear so that it sounds like a real drummer that's not repeating, gives it a human quality.